How's it going, everyone? My name is Tom, and this is the Maverick Designs Woodworking Shop. Today, I'd like to talk to you about table saws, specifically this one. And this is my Harbor Freight Hercules 10-inch Jobsite saw. I've had this saw for about 3 years now, and this is actually my second saw. Before this saw, I had found an old, I think it was an all-trade brand saw for $25, I think, on Facebook Marketplace. And I drove up to Big Bear up in the mountains to check it out. And this guy literally had this thing sitting on his porch. It was uncovered. It was, I think, raining when I got there. It was all rusted. I was new to table saws. I was relatively new to woodworking, and I was just an idiot, and I just wanted a table saw, and I had to have one right now, and I didn't want to spend more than $25, so I gave the man his $25, and he happily took it, probably grateful just to be able to get rid of the thing. And I brought it back here and put it into this 4x8 outfeed table that I had built specifically for whatever saw I was going to get, and it didn't last very long. I put it in here, I set it up kind of sort of. I'll try to get a picture in here for you, but the fence was literally, it was an old rickety, bent and dented and twisted and just all messed up, and it had like a big screw that somebody had put in there to tighten it down. It was a complete mess. I got it set up the best I could, tied it down, got a 2x4, tried to rip it, and it immediately exploded on me. I mean, it didn't literally explode, but it made a very loud noise. Stopped. The wood shifted a little bit. Thank God it didn't kick back. I didn't have any injuries or anything like that. But the saw was destroyed. It was at an angle. The blade was bent. I mean, I don't even know what happened to it. I just took it and threw it out and talked to my wife and told her, I said, look, I need to spend some money on a better table saw. So I did some research to see what was the best saw that I could get for the lowest price and landed on the Hercules. It had a lot of favorable reviews online, and I even remember some of the people comparing the quality of it to much more expensive saws. And for the price, in comparison with others that were immediately available to me at the time, it was a no-brainer, and I cruised over to Harbor Freight and picked one up. Once I got it home and unpacked it, the first thing that became immediately apparent to me was that I was going to have to modify the outfeed table in order to use the full extension capabilities of the fence. The old saw didn't have any ability to extend like this, so I had just cut a spot out for it in the middle of the table. What I ended up doing is cutting this right side of the wing off in a way that I could remove it in order to use the fence in the extended position and then reinstall it for when the fence was in its normal closed configuration, which was usually the case. So what I did was I installed these guide rails to keep the legs of the removable extension in a fixed position, but still allow them to slide in and out for easy removal and reassembly. Then I drilled some guide holes into the end of the extension and installed dowels in the table to slide the holes onto and snap the extension into place. This system worked very well for me, and I'm actually quite proud of my ingenuity on this one. All right, once you get this thing unpacked, you'll see that it comes with a number of accessories, one of which is the blade guard. It also comes with a miter gauge, some anti-kickback pawls, and a nifty push stick. Starting with the blade guard, this thing is actually pretty decent for a blade guard as far as blade guards goes, and it is pretty easy to install and take off. It has these slots on the bottom that fit over the riving knife, and then there's a spring-loaded pin that goes down into a slot on the riving knife and locks it in place. And all you have to do is slide it down over the right place, over the riving knife, and push down on it, and it will pop right on there. And then you would just pull the pin back out and pull it up off of the riving knife again to remove it. Next would be the anti-kickback pawls, which they're not too bad. They're a little tight, meaning they put quite a bit of pressure down, and on softer woods they will leave a mark. So to be honest with you, I didn't use them very much. But they are similar to the blade guard. They have a slot that slides down over the riving knife, and a pin that kind of, you pull it out and you slide it down on there and then release the pin into the hole and it locks it into place. There's not much to be said about the miter gauge. It is a piece of junk, just like about every other miter gauge you've ever seen that comes with a saw. It fits kind of sloppily in the miter slots, and I wouldn't really use it for anything that is important. You're better off using a crosscut sled or an aftermarket miter gauge that's much more accurate. And the push stick is a push stick. It's actually not too bad. It's pretty rigid. It's not too bad. Next thing we'll talk about is this throat plate, which I actually liked it. It's a pretty good throat plate. It's got a really cool mechanism for getting it in and out. You just have this knob here that has a lock and unlock position, and you turn the knob to the unlock position and reach your finger into the hole and just pop it right out. It's really easy, very user friendly. And the other thing that I like about it is that it's very robust. I don't know if it was aluminum or some sort of composite material, but it was firm and rigid, and it just felt like really good quality. And while we're in here, let's talk about the one thing that I probably like the least about this saw. And that is the fact that you cannot install a dado blade set on this saw. It will not accept the dado set. The arbor, I guess, is too short. I don't know. I never tried it, but they do tell you that it's not compatible with a dado set. So I never, bothered to even try to put one in there. And that can be problematic when you want to use a dado set. I mean, there are other methods that you can use, but that's kind of tedious, and it's just a lot easier if you have a dado set. So one of the biggest things that I wanted when I upgraded out of this saw was to make sure that I got something that would accept the dado set. The other thing that's in here is obviously the riving knife and the adjustment for the riving knife, which is also very easy to do. All you have to do is lift this lever up, and then you can slide the riving knife up and down to the height that you want, and then just push the lever back down and it will lock it back into place. And finally, to reinstall the throat plate, you just drop it back into the hole, turn the knob to the lock position, and it locks in place. Very, very easy. Really like that. The one thing that stands out the most to me on this saw, surprisingly, is the Hercules branded blade that comes with it. Everyone knows that normally the blades that come with any saw are generally junk, and most don't even bother to install them. But I think that would be a grave injustice in this case. If I remember, it's a 40-tooth general purpose type carbide toothed blade. But let me tell you, I had this blade installed for a couple of years, and I cut everything from plywood and melamine to 4x4 pine and walnut on it. Now, it's not perfect, and you might get a small amount of tear out on stuff like melamine and crappier plywoods, especially if you're not careful. But, it's obviously not recommended for something like fine cabinetry or precision work that needs to be flawless. But for your weekend warrior type, part-time woodworker, or home DIYer, which is essentially the demographic that this tool is made for and marketed to, and who's cutting a lot of construction grade material to make stuff around the house, rustic furniture, things to sell at craft fairs, etc. This is an excellent saw blade that keeps its edge for a good long time. I wouldn't go as far as to say it's as good as something like a Diablo, but if it isn't, it's pretty darn close to it. The bottom line is it's a pretty decent blade that I really liked and would recommend. Moving along to the fence, I should first note that mine is the first generation of this saw, and the second gen models are now equipped with a rack-and-pinion fence system, probably to compete with something like a DeWalt. As you can see, this one is a regular sliding type fence, but I have to tell you, this is not a bad fence. It has the ability to be adjusted for squareness to the table, as well as an adjustable marker that allows you to hone in on your measurement accuracy. I can honestly say that I never had a single problem with this fence. I only had to adjust it maybe once or twice in the 2 years that I used it, and it always gave me a straight, accurate cut every time. Moving over here to the right side of the saw, as you're facing it is the area where you can store all of the accessories if you want to. Here in the middle on the inside is where the wrench for removing the saw blade goes. It's held on by this wing nut here. Honestly, it's kind of a pain in the butt to get in here and get at it, especially the way mine is sitting inside the table. I had to, take some things apart and get down in there and get it off, get it on. It was actually just much easier for me to grab a wrench out of the toolbox, but it is convenient to have a place to keep it. I suspect, especially if you're a contractor and you're carrying it around to job sites with you. Just below that is the push stick holder. It's these two plastic pieces that stick out. You just slide the slots in the push stick over those and then push it forward and it locks into place on there. And finally, there's this pair of brackets at the bottom that are made to hold your blade guard when you're not using it. Installing it on here is very similar. It's exactly the same, actually, to installing it on the riving knife. There's a slot on here that's just like that one, and you just push it down and lock it into place. And the last thing worth mentioning down here is up there in the top left corner of your screen is the lever that is used to lock and unlock the extension table. And we're going to talk about that in more detail in just a minute. This is the front of the saw, and when I first was looking at this saw before I bought it, one of the things that appealed to me about it was this rugged roll cage type of look, and it just kind of had a military grade type of style to it other than the color, and I just liked the way it looked. I thought it was cool. On the left side here is the paddle for the power switch. The actual power switch is this green button here in the center, but once you turn it on with that, you depress the paddle to shut it off. Gives you a bigger area. The only thing I would say here is maybe it would be nice if it was a little bit bigger, but it is also nice just to have it there to begin with, as opposed to just a button. And at the top here is this locking mechanism. It's just a plastic flap that you can fold down, and when it's in that position, you're not able to turn the saw on. Right beside that is the wheel that you use to raise and lower the blade. All I'll really say about this is it's functional. It works well. Over the years, it's gotten a little squeaky. It kind of has a ratcheting noise and feel to it as it goes up and down. I mean, you just get used to it, but it doesn't have that fine precision feel of something nice and smooth, but it works just fine. And then right behind the wheel is the lever that you use to unlock the mechanism for changing the tilt angle of the blade. You just pull it up to unlock it, place it where you want it, push it back down to lock it. Pretty simple, and it works well. Okay, so up until now, we've mostly talked about all of the things that I like about this saw, and there are a lot of them. But along with the fact that this saw cannot take a dado blade, there are some other things that I don't like about it. And one big problem involving that extension table lock lever that I pointed out earlier to you that I've had to deal with for the past year or so. As you can see, that lock just stopped working. No matter what position I put it in, the extension table doesn't lock at all, and it just moves around freely, which is a big problem when you're trying to make accurate cuts with this thing extended. What I've been doing to get around this is I've just been getting creative with various ways to hold it into position, usually with clamps, but because there isn't much to clamp to down here, that can be difficult and awkward to accomplish, but I've been able to make it work. I don't know if this is a common issue with this saw or not, and admittedly, I haven't spent a lot of time trying to see if I can fix it, but I just wanted to point it out to you so that you can be careful with yours and keep an eye on it. As for when the extension is closed, the saw fits pretty tightly into the space cut out for it, and I just make sure to pull it all the way to that right side until it contacts the table. That, in conjunction with the fence being locked down to the rail, keeps it in place and doesn't let it move when it's in this position. It's a bit of an inconvenience, but I just have to make do with it, at least until I could afford a replacement table saw that I really wanted. Another thing that's always been a problem for me with this saw is the depth of the tabletop. Now, I know that's more my fault than the saw's fault for buying a compact Jobsite table saw, but it's been a constant irritation to me nonetheless. With a total depth of only about 19 inches and only about 5 or so inches of infeed before you hit the blade,
Cutting anything of the larger variety has always been a challenge, and I've just never felt that it was enough space to warrant building the various sleds and jigs that really make a table saw much more versatile, most notably a crosscut sled. And I don't even want to tell you how I managed to hit the power button while holding something like a half sheet of plywood on the first few inches of the infeed with me 4 feet away from the saw, but it involved a broomstick and a very awkward position that would make just about anyone cringe if they saw it. The last thing that kind of sucks about this saw is the dust collection. It's kind of a hassle to get to if I need to connect or disconnect it, but again, that's more on me and the outfeed table that I built for it. And honestly, I didn't have to do that very often. It would always sit in this place, so I never really had to connect it or disconnect it. But as you can see, even with the dust collection hooked up, I still get piles of sawdust on and around the saw, especially underneath it. But I guess that's to be expected with an economical job site saw.
Look, the bottom line is this saw is not perfect, but for a sub $400 saw, it's a really good saw. It's a good saw for somebody who is a DIYer, a weekend warrior type of woodworker, your typical homeowner that likes to do stuff around the house. This is a great saw for that. It really, really is. You just probably want to take it easy on that fence extension lock, because if that goes out on you like it did on me, then you're going to have the same kind of problems that I had. But hopefully that's just an anomaly to this saw. The Hercules has been really good to me, great in fact. But it's time now for me to move on to something safer and better. So in my next video, I'm going to be unboxing and setting up the Sawstop. So if you have any interest in that, I hope to see you back again. That's all I have for you today. So I hope you either got what you were looking for out of this video or were at least mildly entertained. I know I'm not the most charismatic guy in the world, but I'm doing my best here. I'd really appreciate if you hit the like button on the way out. Maybe subscribe if you like the video. I'm new to this whole YouTube thing, so I'm learning as I go. But I understand it, that helps out the channel. So I'd really appreciate it. So I hope to see you next time. And until then, stay safe and happy woodworking. See ya.